Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much for your courtesies of extending me the time as a ranking member of this subcommittee, and I give you greetings from the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Thompson. You ended just as I would like to begin, and that is, Governor, to thank all of you here in the state of Texas that have always risen to accept the challenge. And it is my personal commitment, along with my colleagues, that as the President has put forward the $2 billion to address this humanitarian crisis, that Texas will stand in the very noble position to receive the funding necessary for reimbursement, but to continue some of the hard work that you've already engaged in. We thank your Department of Health that has been absolutely unending, your DPS, Texas Rangers, and very grateful that you have offered your commitment. You know that we worked together during Hurricane Katrina, and again, Texas opened her heart to receive those who were in great need. So let me acknowledge that the federal government is doing its work. I think that is going to be my role today, but that we can always do a better job. And so I do want to take note of the Border Patrol and thank them for the work they've done in 207,000 arrests from fiscal year October 13 and ongoing. They have not diminished in the assignment that we have given them. ICE, on the other hand, likewise. Last year, 107,000 deportations. This year in this region, now 115,000. I think it is a failing concept to suggest that the federal government is not doing its job. But we have an humanitarian crisis. And let me just for a moment acknowledge State Representative Tony Dale here in Texas, State Representative Alan Fletcher, and let me acknowledge the Chairman of the Board of South Texas. I know these are all constituents of Congressman Sheila, who I'll acknowledge, Rose Benavides. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Swalwell of the San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you for being here. Mr. Gene Green of Houston, thank you. And our own Congressman Philemon Villa, who has been here throughout this time frame, and he has been working in his district. He represents all throughout the Rio Grande Valley. And we want to acknowledge Senator Hinojosa, who is here as well. Let me thank you so very much for all that you all have done. So I believe that this is a humanitarian crisis. And I know in Washington we use the term humanitarian. And I think we need to continue to use that terminology, because if we look and do our homework, we will find out that according to the United Nations, we don't have to make it up. These children have been forcibly displaced. Anyone, as my chairman has indicated, that has spent time loving and hugging and seeing these children, listening to the Border Patrol agents, as I've done going from Harlingen to McAllen and Brownsville, going out on the Rio Grande and going up and down, seeing the hard work that Border Patrol is doing, but they will tell you these are the most orderly, behaved children who simply want an opportunity to be free from the murderous conditions of which they flee. I ask the question, is not America that great? As we are on the edge of the 4th of July, a time that reflects all of us fleeing from those of our ancestors, fleeing from persecution, and then announcing the greatness of this nation, are we not able to address the humanitarian crisis? I think we are. And so let me offer to you something that cannot be refuted. The 3 Central American countries have among the highest per capita homicide rates in the world, with Honduras stopping the list and the other 2 nations in the top 5. When the bishop testified in Washington, D.C., Governor, he indicated that he had spoken to individuals who had in fact said to them that their children would be killed dead in the spot if they did not join a gang. What would any of us do as parents? We would take them and we would flee. Now let me make it very clear. The South Texas region needs our help, and they have done an enormous job. The Baptist Center, the Catholic Charities and Sacred Heart that we were able to visit, and even the volunteers that have been able to come into the detention centers, they have done a magnificent job. But it is very important to know that a massive deportation policy for children and a mandatory detaining for children is not a humane thing to do. We must find a way to follow the law. Republicans voted for the law in 2008, and that is the law that transfers these children to Health and Human Services. Now maybe we need added help. We are all across America looking for facilities, and I might add that there are people raising their hand. I spoke to people in Dallas. I've spoken to people in Houston. I imagine there are people beyond our boundaries ready to offer these facilities so these children can go through the normal court proceeding. I am ready to provide funding for more ICE officers, more resources for the Border Patrol, more help for the state, but in particular the Border Patrol, that gives them more technology, that gives them more resources down here on the border, that adds more ICE officers for transport and other necessary ERO responsibilities, more immigration judges, and more infrastructure work is what we are prepared to do. But I do believe that we should be cautious in rushing to judgment on any form that would detain children. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm here to listen. I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to hear from very distinguished members as well as our governor and well as Bishop Sees, who was there before. But I do want to end on this note. I always like to take things when I visit people who are detained for reasons that are not of a criminal nature. Whether it is to visit with those in Darfur, or to be able to engage in Afghanistan, or to be able to talk to children wherever they are, homeless children. These are lollipops. I took lollipops along with my colleagues into those detention centers where children were. I wasn't armed. I wasn't fearful for my life. This is not a national security crisis. This is a humanitarian crisis. And so the question is, how can we, as good Americans and Republicans and Democrats, do what the chairman has said, be able to have in place an orderly process that people will know that crooks and criminals and thieves and smugglers and traffickers who are lying to them in Central America cannot be coddled. That's who we should go after. But the children should be given the basic coverage of the law that is in existence today that will allow us to treat them in a humane way. I hope this hearing will give us the additional insight to be able to do this. I do believe that the United States is doing and following the law, but we need to do better, and I look forward to doing so as we proceed in this hearing. I yield back.
I thank the